Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Jay Cohn. Montana ranchers will have access to a new $200 million market next year.
A new trade deal signed today will deliver Montana beef to China. And soon, Montana ranchers will be helping to feed some of the country's 1.3 billion people.
This announcement comes after China reopened its borders to U.S. beef earlier this year.
With more on what this means for Montana's beef cattle industry, here's Russell Nimitz.
When they get a taste of U.S. beef, they love it and they want more of it.
For the first time in 14 years, U.S. beef is back in China.
There is a bigger middle class in China than there is the U.S. population. So this is a foot in the door, and we think long term that has tremendous potential for U.S. cattlemen.
Montana isn't wasting any time. This week, Montana Senator Steve Daines secured an agreement between JD.com, one of China's largest retailers, and the Montana Stock Growers Association with the intent to purchase a minimum of $200 million in Montana-sourced beef over the next several years.
Well, this was a fantastic step. Montana Stock Growers has always been an avid marketing team to try to get Montana beef out to the world. It's the safest, highest quality. I mean, Montana is like the home of the highest quality beef in the country.
For Montana ranchers, export markets like China also make a difference on sale day.
No question. We export 13% of our production overseas now. It's one of the factors that's driving the better cattle prices that we've seen this fall.
The Chinese do have some special requirements, though, on Montana cattle to be exported.
Cattle have to be NHTC, which is non-hormone treated, and they have to be sourced from the ranch.
Beef is actually the largest growing meat sector in China, and with agreements like this now in place, Montana ranchers will soon be feeding their growing appetite for U.S. beef. Reporting from the National Association of Farm Broadcasting Convention here in Kansas City, I'm Russell Nimitz, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Russell.
Now, the agreement also says JD.com will seek to invest up to another $100 million to build a processing plant in Montana.
No word yet on where, but construction could begin as early as 2018.
Now, that big announcement comes as President Trump talked trade with North Korea and Chinese leaders today.
Stephen Portnoy is traveling with the president and has more tonight from Beijing.
Here in Beijing, where it's already midday Thursday, Chinese President Xi Jinping put on an elaborate welcome ceremony for President and Mrs. Trump. The massive Great Hall of the People on the west side of Tiananmen Square is where President Trump and President Xi will spend the day holding talks, expected to mainly focus on trade and North Korea. The two presidents will give statements to reporters here later Thursday. The U.S. has a larger trade deficit with this country than any other. Last year, the Chinese sold nearly $350 billion more in goods than the U.S. sold here. And President Trump wants the Chinese to open this market to more American-made goods. Yesterday in Seoul, South Korea, the president called on all responsible nations to do more to isolate the North Korean regime. He said countries that enable Kim Jong-un will have the nuclear crisis on their conscience. Stephen Portnoy, CBS News, with the president in Beijing.
And the president and the first lady will leave China for Vietnam tomorrow night.
2 years ago, the Bureau of Land Management approved of a plan that would keep the greater sage-grouse off of the endangered species list.
The BLM talked about possible changes to that plan that many say involve people on both sides of the issue. Q2's David Jay joins us with more from today's meeting. David.
Jeanelle, Jay, the BLM says the plan from 2015 was what it calls cookie cutter or one-size-fits-all. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke wants to give people a chance to comment and possibly change and adjust certain parts. And some see this as a complete change. The BLM office in Billings held what it calls a scoping meeting to explain the current plan and hear from the public at 2 sessions. The 2015 plan is in the process of being implemented. The BLM can modify policy, but certain changes will require a more involved amendment process. And some say their concerned changes might affect the sage-grouse population, and that many different groups had already agreed to the plan.
We don't want to roll back the entire plans and start from scratch. That's unfair to the Westerners who put so much time into it. An endangered species listing would be harmful for all Montanans, our Western way of life. And so we really need to work to make sure that that is avoided at all costs.
His concerns are that we didn't fully engage the states and our partners in the development of the initial plans. This was, I think, in response to a lot of other states' concerns about plans in their states, but we're not seeing a lot of that concern arise in Montana yet.
And the BLM had originally set November 27th as the end of the public comment period, but during the meeting it received word that it would allow more time and now will accept comments until December 1st. Jay, Jeanelle?
All right, thank you, David.
For the first time, a deer in Montana tests positive for chronic wasting disease.
That fatal disease affects mule deer, white-tailed deer, elk, and moose, and it's been creeping toward Montana for years, and now it's here. Now, the deer in question, a mule deer buck, was harvested southeast of Bridger in late October in Hunting District 510. It's in an area that includes a mix of private and public land.
A second sample from the animal has been sent to a Colorado State University lab to further confirm that finding. Those results are expected next week. With the disease already confirmed in Canada, the Dakotas, and Wyoming, Montana officials knew it was only a matter of time.
For a long time, the states surrounding the north and east and south parts of Montana have had chronic wasting disease, and it's been creeping our way. And so we've known for a long time that it was not a matter of if we ever got chronic wasting disease, it was a matter of when. And we got our first positive sample confirmed late yesterday afternoon.
We've got a situation down there. Montana can do everything right, or do its best to address this situation, but until you figure out a way to clean up that vector and figure out a way to break that transmission line between the feed grounds and Montana wildlife, it's an issue that Montanans are going to have to deal with for a long time.
And Gibson says FWP's Incident Command Team is already in the area to do further testing where the infected animal was harvested. CWD is a slow-moving fatal disease that, if left unmanaged, it can result in long-term population declines.
Now, one possible response to the finding is to hold a special CWD hunt, a hunt that would collect enough samples to determine the prevalence of the disease and to see if it has spread. Gibson says there is no evidence right now that CWD can be transmitted to humans, but it's recommended not to ingest meat from animals that appear to be sick or are known to be CWD positive.
Now, Fish, Wildlife and Parks encourages all hunters harvesting deer within hunting districts 502 and 510 to get their animals sampled at the Laurel Check Station or at the regional office here in Billings.
Billings voters opted for a mix of incumbents and newcomers in Tuesday's city council elections. Incumbents Mike Yakowicz and Sean Brown won re-election, while Paul Ewald, Denise Joy, and Penny Ronning will make their political debuts when the new council convenes in January. Penny Ronning, who won the seat in Ward 4, grew up in Billings, working at her family's restaurant, the Happy Diner on Grand Avenue. Today she told us she decided to run for office because no one was talking about the city's youth.
And it concerned me that I wasn't hearing talk about children and safety of children in our community. And I think that that's something at a city leadership level that we always need to be discussing. And that was why I ran. So of course that's a very passionate issue of mine going forward.
Ronning says she feels blessed to have grown up in Billings and is looking forward to giving back to her community. By the way, the final tally from Tuesday showed 53% of the county's eligible voters cast ballots in the municipal election.
Lockwood voters said yes Tuesday night, and now Lockwood school trustees have 2 years to plan to levy taxes to build a new high school. Tim Sather, the chair of the Lockwood School Board, tells Q2 he's excited with the measure passing with overwhelming support. 69% in favor, 31% opposed. Now, to be clear, the vote does not authorize construction of the high school. Sather says this issue has been talked about for years, and the time was right to move forward.
This is the most excited I've seen the community about this. I don't know that I've run into anybody that said no. So everybody I've talked to is yes, you got to get it done right now. We want it. And that's across the board, people with kids, people with older kids, and obviously the kids, people with their younger kids that will attend this school if it's built. So it's pretty exciting.
And he says the next step is to find an architect, and he's hopeful they could have something on the ballot come May.
On to the weather scene. Bob, we're a week into the month of November, but looking back, how did October stack up?
I thought you'd never ask. November was pretty busy for us so far, but on average, we were a little bit cooler in October. Let me show you what the numbers look like. Take a look at this. Our average high was 60.6 degrees. Turned out to be the 38th coldest on record. The high temperature for the month was 79 degrees. We saw that on the 19th and the 25th. The coldest temperature was 23. That was later in the month, October 30th. And we actually had a trace of snow a couple of times, first early in the month and then at the end. But precipitation was pretty dry as well. Just a little under half an inch for precipitation, or about 2/3 of an inch below normal. Turned out to be the 17th driest October on record. Now, November, we're off to a great start, but we are going to finally see things warm up a little bit. We'll chat about that coming up in a few more minutes.
Look forward to that. Thank you, Bob.
Still to come on tonight's 10 o'clock news. Before it even starts, the agenda of Montana's special legislative session could be expanding.
We'll have more on that in a moment. Plus, is it a ticket or a turkey? Police adding a bit of holiday spirit to their routes today.
And later in sports, state volleyball starts tomorrow in Bozeman. Casey Conlon joins us on site.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire.